Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to our Monday night Moshiach live class because Moshiach matters. And let's get cracking. We have an exciting sikha this evening, as we always do. And it's very appropriate for the times that we're living in. We want to dedicate this sikha to our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land of Israel. First of all, the hostages should be released and they should be healthy, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And God should avenge our blood, and we should have redemption immediately. Okay, when Parshas Vayetze. Aleph. B'noiga the Admor ha'emsei. Baal Yom HaYoledis, or Baal Helulah. So we are on the cusp. The sikha was originally given on the 9th of Kislev. We are now holding on the 8th of Kislev, which makes wait, hold on a second. What date are we on now? We are now on 7th. So tonight is 8th of Kislev. Tomorrow night is the 9th of Kislev, which is the anniversary of both the birthday and of the Hilula, of the passing of the Mittler Rebbe. And the 10th of Kislev, the day after that, is the redemption of the Mittler Rebbe from prison. And the Rebbe says we find something very unique here. Yom HaLedet Shaloi v'Yom HaElula Shalom Halim v'Oiseyoy. That the day that he passed and the day he was born both took place on the same day. 10th Kislev. V'Oid Chiddush Etzlu Shemiya L'Mecheres Yom HaEluledes Shaloi v'Yom Yud Kislev Hag Hagagula Shaloi. And then the day after that is the 10th of Kislev, the day that he was redeemed from prison. Shabbat Nistacharer B'Beis Esrim, when he was released from prison. The Parsha Torah Shebeheim Halim Moedim Halalu Muvan Sheba Parsha Shel Shabbos Zu Parshas Vayetze. So the Rebbe said, we know that everything is Hiskacha practice, and on top of it, everything is connected to the specific Parsha of the week we're holding, which is Parsha Vayetze. The Parshas V'Shlach יכולים למוציא למדים הקשורים עם בעל יום ההולדת ויום ההילולה ובעל הגאולה. So we see that there is a connection to this, to the Parshas we're in right now, which is Vayetze. And on Shabbos Mincha, we move over to Parshas Yishlach. And the Rebbe said we see a connection to the time we are in as it's connected to the Mittler Rebbe's birthday and passing, as well as the day he was redeemed from prison. Klob hikar halotzi mizerli marami Indian shahazman germa b'doreno zo b'zmanano zo hagoula mitzvah shleimayim asher tzikenu k'fi shedubar pa'amim b'rabbis acharenu she'ata kavar misiyamo as kaninim v'tzrik urak l'kabal panim asher tzikenu b'fol mamash. The Rebbe said, and all this applies very specifically to us in the specific time which we find ourselves, as we have mentioned many times recently, that now we have already passed all the signs of the redemption, and the only thing left is to receive the face and inward dimension of our righteous Redeemer Mashiach in actuality. Base. חידוש בכך שיום ההולדת ויום ההילולה של צדיק חלים בעשר היום. So the Rebbe said there's something very special about when a tzaddik is born and passes on the same day. It's not a very common occurrence. Al divrei Moshe Rabbeinu, we see the same thing happen with Moshe Rabbeinu. Bein 120 shana anochi hayayim. Moshe was ben 120 shana, 120 years on this day. Amoras HaGemara, Matam Alei Hayoim. Why does the Gemara specifically say Hayoim on this day? Hayoim Ma'aloi Yemei V'Shinoisi. Lamdecha Shekadosh Baruch Hu Yosef B'Mila Shenoiseihem Shel Tzadikim מיום ליום, מחודש לחודש, ונאמר es mispar yamecha alama. That it says that we learn that Hashem fills all the days of the righteous people from day to day, from month to month. Haperush b'zeh b'pashtusu she'etzel tzadishna hashlemus. Excuse me, Sha'Kodesh Baruch Hu, Mamad kol yemei chayav. That we know that the days of a righteous man, of a tzaddik, are complete, because Hashem is the one who fills all the days of his life. Es mispar yamim yamecha ama. These are the days of his life that God has allotted for him. Shaya mispar shanim ago umalo v'yom holedesei ad yom histachosei ad l'diuk shel yamecha. And the fact that he was born and passed on the exact same day obviously has some deep significance to it, because we know that everything is complete Hashgacha Pratis, and God in his infinite wisdom chose that the Mittler Rebbe was born and passed on the same day. So there must be something very special about it. So the Rebbe said, what? Obviously this is a unique thing. But besides the fact that we can say, oh, look how cool, he was born and passed on the same day, what does it mean? What does it mean that his days were complete? That the actual service of a tzaddik, of a righteous person, has nothing to do with physicality. In fact, it's a completion of spirituality. That's what his work is in this world. Excuse me, and that we see seemingly that it's not connected at all or dependent upon his physical days. Because we know that the life of a tzaddik, again, is not connected to physical, but to spiritual. Shem amuna v'yira ahava. That the life of, it says that tzaddik lives by his faith and his love and fear of God. It has nothing to do with his physical work in this world. Mamela, move on from this we can understand. She'etzel tzaddik yochola l'chora lihiyosh leimus ha'avoda u'ruchnis. Afilu ka'asher shenoisav einam b'miluim b'yoyim nayoyim. Kafi she'ruim etzel roi v'tzaddik histalkalu shehistalkus achen lo hayesed b'yim ha'ledetzah. And therefore we see that a tzaddik, that he is able, seemingly, that his service should be complete in ruchnius, even when on the day of his birth and passing are not the same thing, because again, the tzaddik's work in this world is beruchnius, it's spiritual. So, what does it really make a difference on what physical day he's born and what physical day he passes? How is that affecting his work in this world, which is completely spiritual? Gimel, v'yesh more this to say hashlemus avodas hatzaddik b'sha'ah sheshlemus haruchnius mistakafot gam b'shlemus hagashmius. So we see the complete work of a tzaddik is at the completion of ruchnius, because it also reflects on the completion of gashmius. Ruchnius again meaning spirituality, and gashmius meaning physicality. Shlemus mezvan avoda, so the completion of the time of his work, including the days and the years and the days of his life, of his physical life. The Chazal and our rabbis teach us. Yedua, yemei tamimim, kashem shehem tamimim kach shenoisem tamimim, that their days of a tzaddik are perfect. והטעם לזה הוא כיוון שתכליס השלימוס עבודת התורה במצווה של יהודי מספרטס וזה שיברר ויזכח אז גופו הגשמי באופן שאין שום חלקים נפרדים שחייב בחייב שלהם אין עבודת השם שלא מגעס חס ושלום. That we see that since the ultimate completion of the service of a tzaddik is the Torah and mitzvahs, and this applies to every Jew. So it's expressed in this that the refinement and purification of his physical body or physical things. באופן שאין שום חלוקים נפרדים חייב שעליהם אין עבודת השם שלא מגייס חס ושלום. אבל כל הפרטים בחייב הדורים ברוחם של נשמסי ברוח הנפש שלום. In such a way that it doesn't make a difference in the separation between his life. Wait, hold on. באופן שאין שום חלוקים, in a way that there is no dividing and separating in his life. And that the service of Hashem for him, chas v'shalom. In other words, there's nothing that is contingent or dependent upon the tzaddik service of Hashem. It's always complete. But specifically in his life, it's penetrated through his soul and his spiritual work. That his physical existence is totally nullified and secondary to his soul and his spiritual existence. באופן שכל הגשמיוס הוא כמו כלי לבוש ועד כמה מרכבה שמשקפס ומשפטס ושלימוס עבודת הרוחניות. In such a way that we see that the physicality of him is literally a vessel or a garment that becomes a chariot, if you will, that reflects and expresses the completion of his spiritual work. In other words, that even though the life of a tzaddik is not a physical life, but a spiritual life. מסיר מזה, המשך, מספרסטוס של חיים ברוחני. Namely, that the completion of his service, Chaim, it's impressive, that the completion of his service is when his spiritual life is penetrated and reflecting and entering his physical life. In other words, when they reach a state of oneness, right? The Alter Rebbe talks about in the Tanya this concept of a tzaddik that suffers, a tzaddik that prospers, chulu. And ideally, someone is to reach a state of completion in your service of God. It has to be both. It has to be bagashmis v'ruchnis, because God is, in fact, spiritual and physical. He's neither and he's both. So to have a prosperous spiritual life but suffering physically, something is lacking, and vice versa, of course. And therefore, his physical life actually becomes a vessel or a garment, if you will, that encloses his spiritual life to allow this unification in a state of oneness. And even more than this is that it draws down and spreads out to his entire spiritual life. So they ultimately become unified or one with his spiritual life, as we said. So there's no separation. And this is, as just a side note, that this is every Jew will reach this level when Mashiach comes. And the Rebbe says on numerous occasions in these sichos that we all have that potential now to reach what we say is a state of shlemut, or completion. And completion has to reflect every capacity. You can't live Mashiach in your physical being, but be an emotional wreck. And you can't have mental issues and at the same time be a Talmud Chacham. And you can't be connected and learning Torah, but your body is unhealthy because you're eating like garbage. And you can't be in a high level of ruchnius if, in fact, you're suffering and you can't pay your bills. Because all of these things have to come together. The idea is that ultimately we have all levels of our soul unify into one. So we have a complete state of oneness, where we're ultimately a chariot for Hashem in every manifestation of our being. In such a way that they literally become one. Physical and spiritual. There's no more separation. And again, this is a concept that the Rebbe emphasizes many times in these teachings, that Am Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu are one. Literally. God and the Jewish people are one. And Gashmius and Ruchnius are completely one. That physical and spiritual are completely one. That this idea of oneness, of completion, this is what Moshiach is about. Moshiach, keep in mind, is the same root letters of Chamesh and Sameach. Chamesh meaning 5, referring to all 5 levels of your soul. When all 5 levels of your soul, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, are all in line, then the 5th level of your soul, which is your Yechida, can penetrate into every aspect of your being. And this is what makes you happy, because now you're living in the state of redemption. There's no longer a disconnect between the head, between the heart, between the spiritual, between the physical. You have a total state of what we say as flow, where energy is just in a state of flowing and everything works how it's supposed to be. And that's the level that every Yid will be at in the true and complete redemption. And it's already has started unfolding now. Just a side note, I had on Friday night, I had my chiropractor over for Shabbat dinner, and I've been putting tefillin on him on a regular basis when he comes over. And he said, it was the first time he went to a Shabbat meal in a while. And I was talking about this concept, how what's going on in the war right now. You see, on a positive note, how many Jews have woken up. How many Jews, that people who were at that march in Washington, D.C. with 300,000 people, said that the Lubavitchers who showed up with tefillin said there was lines, like people putting on hundreds of pairs of tefillin, they're putting on hundreds of tefillin on hundreds of Jews at a time. There's literally huge lines, like everyone was waiting to put on tefillin. And I was talking about this, and he openly said that he's experienced a similar thing, that he feels his soul waking up. He wants to be more involved in Yiddishkeit. He wants to do more mitzvot. He wants to be more connected. And that's the idea, is that the people who at one point in time had this disconnect, so to speak, are starting to connect. And because we are already living in Yemot HaMashiach, and now what's happening is it's manifesting in the world. Yeah. And that a complete spiritual life reflects and is representative of a complete physical life, the life of flesh. In such a way that one's physical life, life of flesh, if you will, is not lacking anything whatsoever, right? The Gabi Shleimus B'Chaim. And this is regarding a completion of the spiritual life. Again, oneness. That's the idea. Nothing should be lacking. From top to bottom. Physical, spiritual. Bottom, actually, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, everything, godly. It should just be a total flow of energy. And therefore, his physical life is it drawn down and expressed in continuation from his spiritual life. We're talking about the Mittler Rebbe now, but obviously the Rebbe is referring to the fact that every Jew has this potential now to reach this level. That specifically through the completion that is expressed also in his physical existence. This is causing upon him, even regarding the completion of the spiritual from his side of existence. Again, this total state of oneness. One is reflecting the other. The Rebbe says one is only an ani, a poor person in dots. It's a very interesting concept that one is only poor in knowledge. What do you mean? So it can't be poor in material things? It means that if someone's dots is lacking, in other words, if his chokhmah and bina, if his masculine and feminine energies are not balanced, then he is lacking in his dots or his knowledge. And therefore, it expresses itself in his pocket. And it's a crazy concept, but it makes sense when we understand that our wives are their vessel for our parnasah. So if something is lacking, and again, our wife is not just a physical manifestation, it's a manifestation of our feminine energy. And if there's a dichotomy, if there's a breakage, if there's a lack between the physical and, between the masculine and feminine energy, then you can't have proper dot. If Chokhmah and Bina are not aligned, you don't have proper dot. And if you don't have proper dot, the Rebbe says this is called poverty. And therefore, it manifests into physicality as well. Therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yoshe b'meila shenoisei him mishal tzadikim b'yom l'yom. Hashem fills the years of a tzaddik every single day. Kevan sheshleimus ha'avodah shel tzadik hadoras v'mistakefes b'shleimus shel hageshmis. And that since the complete service of a tzaddik, as we already said, penetrates and also is manifested into the completion of his physicality. Because ultimately the life of a tzaddik is a spiritual life. But the idea is that it reflects into physical. And therefore it is within the boundaries, if you will, of this physical world. And it's manifested in time and place. Physical, right? It's chalek liyamin, and the division of his days. Yemei Hashanah, the days of his year. K'marazal mishpachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba'olam yikava bo roishe chadashim v'shanim k'shevachar b'Yaakov Ovana kava bo roish chodesh ha'geula. And therefore we see when Hashem shows the heads and place the heads of the months and the years. And it says, this is connected to Yaakov and his offspring. That this set forth the months and the days, Rosh Chodesh, of the redemption. Zot Amert is to say, Shekaviyah is the Shanim Kashor Ba'om. Benigod, the Kaviyas, the Rosh Chodesh, Shel Geula. And this is connected into the physical world, as it's connected to Rosh Chodesh of redemption. And this is connected also with the choosing of Yaakov and his children. V'shana mekifa b'kladus b'toichai as kol shinui hazman. Lokei mizbatas leimas avoda shel tzadik b'zeh shegam shenoisean tamimes. HaKadosh Baruch Hu yeshab b'mila shonayim b'yom neyot. Every single we see that's in the year in general, how Hashem causes the changes in time, and therefore it's expressed in the completion of the service of tzaddik through spirituality. And in this also, it is connected to the perfection of time and the years. That Hashem fills his years from day to day. In other words, there's nothing lacking whatsoever. A tzaddik doesn't sit around and is like, what am I going to do today? Let me, I don't know. Like, every second is precious. Every second. The most valuable thing we have in our life is not money. It's time. I'm not talking about family and all those things. Of course, I'm talking on a personal level. People think money. It's time. Because money comes and goes. We've all made money. We've all lost money. But time doesn't come and go. It just goes. Once it's gone forever. You can't make up time. You cannot fix time. It's if this Bubba mindset of Chabad time. I don't know who came up with this, because there's no more yeki of time than our Rebbe. I've said this story many times. One time there was a Fabringen, and it was went a little bit later, and one of the Rebbe's secretaries came up to the Rebbe, who walked out of the Fabringen, So what time the Rebbe said, what time is mincha? What time should we call mincha? And the Gabbai said, I don't know, 3:05, 3:10. The Rebbe said, tell me which one. I could accomplish a lot in 5 minutes. Every minute is meduyak. Don't waste time. You'd never get it back. Skipping the brackets. Kach. Hashlemas v'tenimois shel tzadiki beruchnis v'gashmis b'shaveh. And therefore we see that the ultimate perfection, if you will, of a tzaddik's existence is when his ruchnius and his gashmis are equal. This is a clear sign that everything is in perfect balance. Nothing is off. There's no, well, everything's good except, or, he's holy, but everything is, again, in what we call a state of flow. A state of flow meaning there's no energy blocks. There's no energy blocks. Everything just flows and flows and flows and flows through. And again, this is a common theme we see with Chabadic, right? I talked to a lot of Lubavitchers. Chabad came about the importance of mental health, of going to therapy. And the answer I get a lot of times is, we don't need that, we have Chassidus. Okay. So how do you explain that on JCW's Wall of Fame, there's 50 or 60 Lubavitchers who are learning Tanya and Chassidus every day, but they're sexually abusing kids? Makes sense? But you're learning Chassidus. Because if something is off in your brain, in your heart, in your body, the energy, the light from the Keter can't penetrate. It's blocked. So it doesn't go into that reciprocal organ. And there's a blockage. And things don't flow. On the same token, you can have the greatest genius in the world who's a wonderful person. If you're not learning Torah, there's no energy coming through the higher levels of your soul. And there's also a blockage. Everything has to flow. Everything has to work in complete sync. To me, the Tamimois ba'avodas haruchnis. Kashem shehem Tamimim, kach shenoisim Tamimim. And there before we see that Tamimois, the perfection of the years of his life, of his physical life, are drawn down and one with the perfection of the service in Ruchnius. And then we have what we say, Shonaisim Timimim. His years are complete, they're perfect, because everything is in line. Okay, skipping the brackets. Just a reminder for all those out there, anyone who is following inside, we always skip the parentheses and brackets, not because they're that important, but we have time constraints. And the truth is, if you really wanted to go through and learn all these footnotes on the bottom of the page, I had a friend of mine in yeshiva who used to do it. Hours. He would pull every sefer from all the footnotes and all that. And wow. I mean, it's a whole different world of experience. You get a little taste of what it is Moshiach, and what it is the Malchus of the Rebbe, how he brings from every single source of Kabbalah, of Hasidus, of Nigla. It's mind-boggling how many quotes and how many different sources the Rebbe pulls from in one of his sichas or in my marm. But that's a little bit beyond our scope for the couple hours we have together. B'shleimuzu hayisa begilui etzel ha'adlis etzel Moshe Rabbeinu b'sheva ba'adar mes b'sheva ba'adar nolad. And we see with Moshe and the completion as it was revealed through our avos. And we see specifically through Moshe Rabbeinu that his years were filled and complete. He was born on the 7th of Adar and he passed on the 7th of Adar. That's therefore he was the first shepherd of the Jewish people. For Prime Moshe, and specifically Moshe the Rebbe Hamel, was called the faithful shepherd of the year. And therefore we see this concept again with Moshe Rabbeinu, that his years were complete and his years were filled because he was born and passed on the exact same day. And And therefore we see this is also expressed and revealed through the Admor HaEmsoi, the Mittler Rebbe, who is the Moshe Rabbeinu of his generation. By the way, on a side note, it's interesting, most people connect Moshe Rabbeinu to the sphere of Chokhmah, and in fact that's not really true. The Rebbe Melech Moshiach brings down in a mimer on Achron Shel Pesach that Chokhmah is Adam Harishon, that Moshe Rabbeinu is actually Bina. And Yaakov, of course, is Tiferet, and David Melech Mashiach is Malchus. Interesting. So in fact, it says that Moshe had the potential for the level of Chokhmah, but after the Jewish people sinned, and in fact before the sin of the Eitzach Egel, he was, if you will, in the alignment with Chokhmah. But after the sin, it caused him to fall, and therefore he was not because of him, but because the generation is connected to him. So we see a connection between Moshe Rabbeinu of the sphere of Bina, and of course the Mittler Rebbe, who is also Bina, second to the Alter Rebbe, and of course his magnum opus, which is Imre Bina. So we see a deep connection to the roots of their souls as well. And also we see a connection to this week's Parsha V'Yetzeh. And also Yishlach that we read in Mincha, Shebhen Motzi'im Devar Pena. And we find something wondrous here. Oh, wow, this is a long sikha. All right, let me figure out where it ends and where it begins. I like to try to pace myself. As you know, I always do my best to try to finish in a timely manner. So here, 247 to 283. That's 36 pages. Well, that could be the longest sikha here. Sometimes they have short on each page. That would be 18 would bring us to the midpoint, which would be 242, 57, 305. No, what am I talking about? 18, 250, 265 would be the midpoint. Okay, let's see how we can do this. Ikar hasipor b'Torah shel avodah shel Yaakov Avinu lo b'Parshas Toldos, that the main story of our father Yaakov is not spoken about in Parshas Toldos. Shebo medubar ech Yaakov haya b'bayit aviv. That it's Israel, where over there it talks about how Yaakov left the house of his father and traveled to the land of Israel. And about Parshas V'Yetzeh, but in our week's Parsha V'Yetzeh, Shu medubar al V'Yetzeh Yaakov meber Sheva v'yoyda Haran. It speaks about at length how Yaakov went out from Beersheba and went and traveled to Haran. Yetzias Yaakov meber Sheva. Oh, I just reminded I didn't send tzedakah. 1 second. Haran, Af Shal Makoim, Al Levan Harami. This was the place of Levan Harami. Im Kar Haninim Habliti Ritsuim. And it was a place filled with undesirable things. It's a nice term the Rebbe called Bliti Ritsuim. God knows what was really going on there, but he calls it undesirable things. And therefore was a tremendous descent from where he had to go to. Where he came from, where he was going. And it says, and therefore Yaakov was afraid. In addition to this, Dafka b'choroim nisa Yaakov Hakim as Beisoy Yisoy Shel Am Yisrael. And not only that, it says specifically in Haran, Yaakov fathered what ultimately would become the Jewish people. In other words, he left the holy land of Israel, the holiest place in the world, and God decided that he would give birth to the offspring of what would become the tribes of the Jewish people into the lowest, most disgusting place in the world. It doesn't make sense, right? If you ask someone where should be the birthplace of the Jewish people, of the tribes, Israel, the holiest place in the world. God took them out of Israel and sent them to the worst place of Klippa to start the family of the Jewish people. Afilu la'achar sheyakrev hashalim es avodisa etzel levan b'choran hu mitkanan the shuval bite aviv kafisha bikash b'shvati b'shalom es beit aviv. And it says even after that Yaakov completed his service with Lavan and Haran, and he returned to his father's house. Shalom as Beit Avi. And afterwards Hashem said, return to your land and your father's house, and your birthplace. And we see that Yaakov fulfilled the commandment, and immediately returned to the land of Israel. And this began only then the story of Yaakov with Esau. Yishlach Yaakov malachim lefanav al Esau v'chav aratzoi seir sadeh Edom. And Yaakov sent forth the angels before Esau, his brother, and in Seir, which is Edom. Im ka pratim parshas v'yishlach, and this is brought down in extension in next week's parsha v'yishlach. Shoy l'chor ikar hasipor shalavodis Yaakov Avinu bator echad rabos hein markava v'lerab b'chor sheva avos. And seemingly, we see that the main story of the service of Yaakov, our fathers, Bator Echad, from and not only that, he is the chosen of the fathers. He is the choice of the Avos, right? He's the completion of the Merkava. He's the Tiferet, if you will, from Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. That we see it is necessary that his service connected to the land of Israel specifically. And according to this, we see it's connected to the story in the Torah regarding the service of Abraham Yitzchak. That their main service was connected to the land of Israel. But yet we see Yaakov, who ultimately became the forebearer, who became named Israel. He became the name of Jew, of Israel. And yet we see most of his work was not in Israel. It was in Haran. It was in the lowest place in the world. It seems to not make sense. Hey, so now let's delve a little bit deeper into these deep wonders. Let's see what's happening. Like it's known that the deeds of the fathers are assigned to their children. Sorry, I keep remembering things that pop in my brain that if I don't spit out, I'm going to possibly forget. And we can see at the story in the Torah of the deeds of Yaakov with Lavan and Esau. This is a sign to the ultimate service of the Jewish people. What's going on? The Rebbe is going to explain now. And so, Asipor b'Torah al Yaakov Avinu, shezohi hapam harishona b'Torah shebo medubar ba'arichos, b'pratios al avoda ba'olam melamdas haTorah Torah melashon hora'ah hara ledoros. That we see in the middle of the story in the Torah of Yaakov Avinu, that this is the first time in the Torah that it is explained at length the details of the service of the Avos, specifically Yaakov, in the world. And we have to learn out from this something, because the Torah comes is the same word of hora'ah, which means to learn. And so the teaching of our generation, we need to learn. That the ultimate service of a yid is an actuality in the world, to affect the world. And the Torah also, we have to learn out from this in the order of the service in the specific details. So just in a general way, we learn from this work that the fact that Yaakov Avinu's main work was not in Israel, and in fact, his main work and the tribes came into being in the land of Haran, in the most dirty, spiritually corrupted place in the world at the time. And this is where his work was. So just in a general way, we have to understand that the general work of the Jewish people is in the lower part of the world. And it's not necessarily dealing in with lofty high matters. It's getting dirty, if you will. Dirty with things that maybe you don't want to get dirty with. And everyone has their own definition of what that means. But this is our work. It's in the kishkas of this physical world. And Yaakov went up from Beersheba and traveled to Haran. Small, as you read, this symbolizes in general the descent of the soul into the body. That's the general descent we're talking about. Nishmasa shall call Yehudi. Neshama shnistet be taharahi. And we see that the soul that God breathed into us is pure. Yotzas meBeersheba, and he went out from Beersheba. Spheres habina. This is the sphere of bina. He's getting into a little bit of Chassidus and Kabbalah, what that means. And again, interesting enough, bina is the same sphere of connected to Moshe Rabbeinu and to the Mittler Rebbe, who we're speaking about at length in this week's Sikha. But he readeth the Malchus, and he descended to Malchus. Bina is known as the upper mother, and Malchus as the nether mother, if you will, or the lower mother. Bina being the upper mother that gives birth to the offspring, or the emotions, or Zot. And Malchus being the lower mother that manifests that energy down into the physical world. And Harna al Nirvida, the Olamois Bia. And then Harna, or Haran, is indicative of the descent through the worlds of Bia, Bria Yetzir Nasiya, all the way down to this lowest physical world. That you created it, you formed it, and you breathed it into me. Talking about our godly soul. Ultimately into this physical, coarse world. Haran, that Haran was a place that was filled with klipa and sitra achar. Literally, the most opposite of God that you could possibly think of. Sorry, something stuck. Excuse me. Okay. Ma'alim u'mistarim al elukus, that concealed and hid over God. Kedusha sai v'ruchni asa shanashama v'oid yisha v'cheloisam rachmani latzon chazik Yehudi kafi sheyakov pachans, until the holiness and spirituality of the soul was completely concealed and hidden over, up into the point where there's a possibility, Rahman Litzan, the Chazik Yehudi, that it can completely overpower a Jew. That the godly soul is so buried beneath so much klipa, that the klipa can completely take over a yid to the point that we start thinking, acting, and speaking completely irrational, like a goy, to the most extreme klipa as possible, instead of acting like a yid. And this is why Yaakov was afraid. He knew the place he was going to. He knew how perverted and how dark it was if he was spiritually. Shehudi Yizgavar Al Kol Ha'olamois V'Histarim Shemitzar Choymriyos V'Gashmis Ha'olam Rather Rabba Shem Yakim Beit Yisrael Ad Oefen Shah Mitasoy Shlema. And we see that this is a tremendous descent, a tremendous going down, and even more so that the Yid Yaakov, that it strengthened him. And all of the matters that were concealing and hiding over, from coarseness of physicality, which is Haran, and not only that, it said this is where his house was his home, in such a way that his bed was complete. It's crazy. It says Yaakov's bed mitasho shlema. His bed was complete. All of his offspring came into being in the lowest, most klipa place of the world. When we first took about 10 years after we moved here from Israel, my wife was pretty miserable. She only wanted to go back. And when we gave birth to our children here in America, at first my wife was, she couldn't believe that our children were going to be born in the Gullus, in America. She only wanted them to be born in Israel. And I learned the sikha with her. I said, excuse me, where were Yaakov Avinu's kids born? They were born in Israel? No. They were born in the lowest spiritual place in the world. And that's where his bed was complete. Because this is the work of a Yid, to go down, 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 down into the klipas and elevate them. And this also, we see this as it's expressed as a soul and a body. That it's revealed specifically the soul and the body through fulfilling Torah and doing mitzvot. As or nishmasoi, in the light of the soul shall shine. But all it is that he machafech as hachoymriyos l'gashmis. And through this will transform the coarseness of the physicality. Pual hagashmish tehea betala u'tefala va'al achli l'ruchnias. And that will cause the physicality to be not only nullified, but transformed to become a vessel for spirituality. Up until the point that his physical body becomes one with his soul. It's a pele. No. And we see this hinted in the beginning of the concept of the going out and the descent of Yaakov, leaving Beersheba and going to Haran. Dafkai de Harna, you read that from the Shama Lamata, specifically through Harna. This was the descent of the soul into the body. Nasa nefavilecha Yishama Atzmoy. Kamosh Kosuv Nasati Lecha Mahalichim. Bein Ha'oindim Ha'el. Va'oi Joyce Na'amar V'yelech Harna V'yelech Harna Haran. Kevan Shavora the Mata Paul as in Halicha. Kam the Mitzvah Shel Harna Atzmoy. And this specifically is the going down into this specific place, into this low place. And therefore it doesn't say V'yelech Haran. Sha'az ha'yisa ha'kavana rak she'Yaakov v'yelech al Haran. Ela v'yelech Harna. It doesn't say Haran, even though that's what we say in English. It says Harna with a hey. Shiramaz v'halicha mishachas as gal al mitziosei uvetoich mitzir shel Haran atzmai. And this is indicative of the fact that it's not that he just traveled down to this place, this physical place called Haran, but rather it drew down his entire existence, mitzir shel Haran atzmai, the existence Haran in of itself. In other words, shedavar zemurumaz gam b'toisefes hey, through the adding of the hey to Haran, which makes it Haran na, k'maymar hazan yivra ha'olam hazeh b'hei, as the rabbis teach us that this world was created from the letter hey, klomar aydei ha'yetziah mevor sheva laharan. In other words, traveling from Beersheba to Haran, Magili and Haran, as a hey, it revealed in Haran the hey. What is the hey? Shem Havaya, the hey of the name Havaya. Shebo Nivra Ha'olam Hazeh, which is referring to this physical world. And therefore, the power and the life force of God to enliven this physical world with spirituality, with godly energy. ובלושן הידוע אס כוח הפועל ונפעל שמבחינים מכריעים ונפעל אס כוח הפועל ועד נפעל הוא רק ביטוי של כוח הפועל. The Rebbe is basically saying that we can't fail in our mission. Like Haranah, doesn't say Haranah, there's a hey. In other words, that God already set this up for us. In other words, God set up the world and set us up that we have the power to transform this world and turn it into a dwelling place for God. Again, everyone's talking about what's going on in the war, what's going to be, what's going to happen. And the answer is we win. That's what happens. The Jewish people win. God wins. Our enemies will be destroyed forever. We will be singing and forbidding in the Beis Hamikdash, and we live forever in eternal joy, prosperity, barachava, begashmis, ruchnis, in a life that you can't even begin to imagine what it's going to be like. The only question is what the road to that place is going to look like over the next, hopefully now, with no extension, but however long it takes, what the road's going to look like. It's going to be a bumpy road, God forbid, which is how it looks right now, or it's going to be a smooth sailing road. But at the end of the day, we win, because that's how God baked our DNA. That's how God baked the DNA of the world, and that's how God set things up. He gave us the power to succeed in our mission, and we cannot fail. No matter how many screw-ups there are, we win. It's just we want to do it in a way of rachamim, that it should be in a way of a merciful way. Vav. Yifga b'makayim v'yilan shem ki bo hashemesh. V'yikach ma'avni ha'makayim v'yisham yisharasa v'yishcha b'makayim ha'hu. כאשר נשמע של יהודי וירץ למטה ולבשו בגוף הגשמי למזל גשמי. Olam Meloshan Hell. And when the soul of a yid descends down below and encloses into a physical body, into a physical world, and the word Olam, or world, is the same root of Helam, which is concealment. This is a world of concealment. Judaism is not a religion. It is how you reveal God in a world that conceals him. That is our work. And of course, that's through Torah and mitzvot. Miyad yesh ki bo hashemesh. Ha'olam ahagilui shel shemesh u'megan havaya elokim. And this is to reveal the shemesh. In other words, it's the pasuk you said before. That the idea is that the sun should shine brightly without its sheath. The sun meaning Havaya, or the revelation of the essence of God. And Elokim, or the sun's sheath, or protective layer, is the name Elokim, which is nature, or the way that God is concealed, if you will. So the idea is to reveal Shemesh Amagim, Havaya and Elokim. That the sun will be removed from its sheath, that the light of the sun, or in other words, or the essence of God, will be revealed in such a high capacity that everyone will acknowledge and recognize that God is in fact the creator, the architect, the director of every aspect of the entire world. And that's what is referring to, that he dwelled in this place. Referring to the fact that this is the pasuk as we're talking about, that as the sun was descending, that Yaakov decided to take a shluf in this particular place, and when he lied down, his head was equal with his body. And this is referring to that he went to sleep, that he took a shluf. And we're going to talk about this now in a minute, how it seemed like a very bizarre place for him to go to sleep and take a shlaf. There's a lot of layers in the sikha. But when he lay down, what happens when someone lays down? They're in a state of equality. In other words, their head, their body, and their legs are all one line, right? Versus sitting or standing, where you see a clear hierarchy between the head, the body, and the legs. And there we see through the concealment and hiding over in this physical world that conceals and hides over God, where we live in what appears to be a state of darkness and doubled over darkness. In other words, you have to struggle to reveal God in this world. For most people, they don't see or they're not aware of a godly presence, at least not on a day-to-day basis. There's God in a makif way, right? Like, yeah, sure, God exists, but when it comes time to our day-to-day lives, the wheels come off very quickly. If God exists, why are we getting angry at our wives? Why are we getting angry at our work? Why when things don't go the way we want, we get angry or upset? Because we're human beings. But if we really had that level of godly energy that was with us all the time, we would be singing and dancing all the time, because no matter what we're doing, we know that God is with us, and he's putting us in the exact situation he wants us to be in order for us to grow and prosper, according to the rules of his world, not according to what we want. Anyhow, and this world is a world that is filled with klipa and sitra achra, literally meaning shells and forces of the other side that are completely against God, right? Look in the world. It's pretty clear to see who is against God right now. Then we see what was going on, that it was necessary, it says, for Yaakov, when he laid down, to take these stones and surround himself around his head. So the wild animals should not attack him. But specifically to this great descent, it caused the revealing and strengthening of his soul, also in his physical body. And therefore he specifically lay down, and as the sun was setting, and at that point his soul and his body were in a total state of equanimity, and even more than this, this laying down position caused that his soul and his body should be in a state of unification, because there's no higher or lower. And through this, it caused the completion and the advantage that is not compared also to the soul in and of itself, as we're going to, with God's help, begin to explain now. It's interesting. There's a lot of layers in the Sikha. I had forgotten a bit about the extent of what's going on here. Okay. And all of a sudden, we must preface this with a question. Excuse me. And we now have to need to investigate this specific pasuk, where it says that in this place Yaakov lied down. L'chora, kitzad meteim shedavka b'makom hahu b'kom hamikdash shekavar Yaakov liishon. The Rebbe said, hold on a second. Where did Yaakov, all of a sudden, as the sun was setting, decide he wanted to go to sleep? He lay down where? In the place of the Beis Hamikdash. That's where Yaakov had his dream of the angels ascending and descending. He lay down to sleep in the holiest place in the world. The afal pi sheyaka'a lo yichama pito'am shelo ba'avnoisa kadesh yalin sham. And even though we can say that the sun was not at the height of its high point, and it already began, if you will, a little bit of the down cycle. Nevertheless, it was far from the time to go to sleep. The sun is not set. It was 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So hold on. The Rebbe has some serious questions here. That our rabbis teach us that this specifically is the place that Yaakov chose to sleep in the middle of the day. Kain kavar avo called Yud Dalid Shana. Shahaya Tamon Bebeit Avar ever Lo Shechaf. So let's understand something. For 14 years, Yaakov learned in the yeshiva of Ever, Shema Ever, and he didn't sleep. How someone goes 14 years without sleeping, I don't know. But obviously, he was not a normal person. By all accounts, the Rebbe doesn't sleep either. So for 14 years, he studied without a wink. Kan shechavar avo kol chof shana she'oimed b'beisai shel Lavan lo shechav. And before that, for 20 years in Lavan's house, he didn't sleep at all. So he didn't sleep 14 years in the yeshiva of Shem Ever, and he didn't sleep 20 years in the house of Lavan. And specifically, after not sleeping for 34 years, he decided in the middle of the day to go to sleep on the floor in the holiest place in the world. Something's not adding up with this story. From this we can understand. Hashichiva hi inyan maloisa va'adaraba. Inyan hakina ala inyan zeh nizgada daf b'makom hamikdash. And we see the advantage even more of this idea, how it was revealed specifically in the place of the mikdash. In other words, v'yesh l'mar b'ira b'zeh havdal hagashvim bein ha'amida v'shchava v'shchiva. That there is a separation between physical, in your physical body, when one is standing or one is sitting, right? Be'ez hamida yeshiva nichar v'giluy halui ben chalech halinayim other than when one is sitting or standing, you can immediately see the difference between your upper body and your lower body. This is not the case when a mensch goes to sleep. When you're sleeping, everything is equal. Uberuchnius, and explaining in a ruchnius way. החלק העליון של האדם מסמל את תוכנה ומחוסו הרוחני. חלק התחתון שלו מסמל בעיקר את הגשמי. That the vision between the upper part of a man that is symbolized through the essence of ruchnius and the lower part of a man, which is representative of gashmius. Right? It's known that our body represents the lower part, the physical, and our upper part, especially in our head, is connected to our soul, to the spiritual. And therefore, we could see that even though it's spreading out and revealing the matter of when you're sitting, we see an up and a down, but not when you're sleeping. When you're in a bed. How you read Haggadah v'Yoser calls us v'Shor Shapanim Yasin Yesh B'Zeh Eloi Gadol v'Yoser Shadaka Mitzav Shal Nimtza Ma'ala Yachanim Mata B'Sheva B'Gomor Shadok Bo Mitzav Gilui Atzmos Tumachus Yisparich. Rabbi said when someone is in a standing or sitting position, we see a clear advantage over their head and the lower part of the body. The head being higher, in other words, spirituality, ruchnius is higher, and the body or physicality is lower. But when one is sleeping, the Rebbe says we have a situation where the very essence and being of God is equal. That the godly energy is separated, is equal across the entire physical plane or body. And we see this expressed also in this idea of above and below. They're completely equal. There's no separation. Physical, spiritual, head, feet, all one level. So ish pashut. We see this also with a simple person. Kashurim pishitas atzmus, and then with a simple being. U'davar zeh nimshach achar kach gam ka'asher hu rak u'metzav hashchiva shegam sham b'makom shemurgishim agedirim v'chalukim shebein ma'al v'mata. And afterwards, he also, if a person stands in the place, it's emphasizing the division between above and below. Then it's drawing down from above to below, from more spiritual, I guess, or revealing the essence of God. But again, when a person is lying down, we see the very essence and being of God revealed in the most equal way possible. Zot, the murder is to say, Shavoda Soishal Yehudi, the service of a Yid, Betsiasai Beersheva Chalichas Harana, that goes out from Beersheva to Haran. There's two matters. Aleph, Noisef al his Gavris Shal Giloi Haruchnias, al Hedlam Hagashmias. This is adding on and increasing and revealing his Ruchnias that is being concealed through his Gashmias. But Gashmias Ainul Ma'alim, and in such a way that the physicality is no longer controlling, no longer concealing over the of the spirituality. Rather, the physical becomes a vessel for the spiritual. And the second thing is, so the first step is that the physical is no longer concealing over the spiritual, that we start seeing that there's godly energy even in physicality. But the higher level to reach is literally where physical and spiritual both reveal the atzmos of God. There's no separation. Gashmias v'ruchnias v'gashmias. Ches. Al pizeh toivan hanhagasoi shel Yaakov v'shchav ha'makoyim hahu shehari adarabah dafka metzad zeh shezehu makoyim hamikdash asher sham taklis shleimas hamshachas v'gilu elokus ad yigilu ha'atzmos. And according to this, we can understand how Yaakov chose to crash out and sleep specifically in the place of the Beis Hamikdash, because there it's the ultimate completion of revealing of godliness in such a way that the very essence of God is being revealed. That by laying down the atzmos, the very essence of God is being revealed above any distinction or levels. וזהו מה שהפסוק ממשיך תקף. וחלואים הנה סולם מוצב ארצה ורשע מגיע שמיימה והנה מלאך אלוקים עולם עולים רידם בו והנה השם ניצב עליו. And this is where we see Yaakov had the dream, Jacob's ladder. And he saw the angels going up to heaven and coming back down, going up and coming back down. See, Led Zeppelin stole this idea from Yaakov Avinu and made a song out of it. Climbing the stairway to heaven. What is that? Yaakov is the one. The angels were climbing up and down. איחוד בין ההרצאה שממה על ידי עצמו זרים מחוסו ובדרך ממילא נמצאים שם כל המלאכים. And the idea is these angels that were traveling up and down and up and down. But the ultimate fulfillment is to this place where everything reaches a state of oneness. And there's also to explain this in a deeper, more inner way. And there we said specifically that I am Hashem, your God. And wait 1 second. But my name of Anochi you do not know. Shegiluyim the Shem Chavaya, referring to the name of Havaya he was not known at prior to that. In other words, it revealed a higher level of godliness than before. Who the Ma'abah Bechinas Yediyah. This is above from the level of knowledge. Kivan Yediyahu Geder Shel Ma'ala. Because the level of Yediyah, of knowing of God, this is referring to a advantage or something that has a higher and a lower. But when he was laying down, he had the very essence and being of God being revealed without any upper and lower, above and below. Everything was equal. So this is nothing but the house of God, other than the house of God. Beit B'dira lo yisbrech, a place of dwelling for Hashem himself. V'hadar B'dira mizgal Hashem b'kol atzmusay. And it's known, it's a basic concept, that when someone dwells in their house, they dwell with all their being. They feel very comfortable in revealing their true essence. Because achar kach es Yaakov nidor es nidroi ad siyoimai kol asher titein li eserana lach al yedei gilui ha'atzmus Yisgal kol asher titein li gashmis v'ruchnis. So they gave that when he gave to him the 10 lands that God was referring to, that he would give to Yaakov and his offspring. This is referring to the very essence of God that will be revealed. That kol asher titein li, everything I have will give to you. Referring to what is everything? Gashmis v'ruchnis, physical and spiritual. In other words, the Jewish people are not only going to reach the highest levels of knowledge of the innermost secrets of God, we're going to be abundantly rich, every one of us, in the highest level capacity. You see these sheiks in Israel, in Saudi Arabia, all these places, bye-bye, gone. All the physical wealth of this world is coming to the Yidden. Gashmis v'ruchnis. This is God's promise. Shleimus, completion. Es Yaakov nidor es nidro ad siyoime kol asher titein li asherin lecha al yedei gilui ha'atzmus Yisgal kol asher titein li Gashmis v'ruchnis gam yechad harahem b'mechias esra asarei sipor sfira haketer. This is also referring to the completion of the 10 sfirot, including keter. And furthermore, it says lecha, to you, to atzmosecha, to your essence. That everything will be given to us. The very essence of God, in other words, God, as we've been learning in these past few sivas, will not hold anything back from us. His very essence and being is going to be revealed in Yom Moshiach. Tess. Wow, it's a long sikha. I think this could be the longest sikha in the series. And according to this, we can understand why Yaakov took this giant, these stones, and he put them around the circumference of his head. Rashi, Sha'an kamin mirzav saviv the roish tira mipnei chayus rois. Says Yaakov took the stones and put them in a semicircle around his head in order to ward off the bad animals that they shouldn't attack him. Hatechila meriva izu ezu zois omeras alini yaniach tzadik es reish v'zois omeras alav yaniach miyar shah kodesh bo evan achad. And this time the stones started fighting. Each one said, I don't want to be off to the side. I want to be right underneath his head. I want to be in the holiest part of him. He's a tzaddik. God said, you guys are fighting. I'm taking all of you and transforming you into one stone. That's why there's no fighting anymore. Now you roll one stone, and the one stone can go under his head. Mivirim umvarshim. Sha'amnan kavanas Rashi Sheyakov Hakif Eskal Gufo Ba'avanim. And according to Rashi, it said he had stoned. One second. Let me continue. Velochem gam diuk lashona mirazav. Shezahu shem tzinor katan sheyitzad min hamachal zichila. Lo shak berazav elek yishesh kasham chaschila. Avoidin zrek lahavin lefi hanal mudua madgish a pasuk. Yesham mishrasav. Beis b'guf ha'inin b'ma mispatas. Hatzala m'chayos. Ayidei nasir merazav. Harich ha'chayos rish yechol l'kfutz ma'ala merazav k'nira u'bachush. The Rebbe said, "Oh God, for we have a couple questions we have to ask." We have to ask and emphasize in this pasuk according to Rashi why the focus was on the stone, specifically on his head. And furthermore, what was the point of putting these stones around him to keep him safe from the wild animals? A lion or a tiger can't jump over a little rock? Makes no sense. Here's a little tiny rock, and the lion's going to come up and say, "Oh, that's too big. I don't want to mess with that." Yud. Now we're going to answer. We're now going to answer according to Chassidut. Just the wave of exhaustion just hit me. And what caused Yaakov to take these stones and arrange them around his head? Yeah, this was not a physical act, but a spiritual act. Esor haneshama ma'toikef gadol, shezehu inyan ha'avanim, ka'asher mizgalis b'mitzias ha'gashmias, mitziosei ha'mitis haneshama, azai ein v'halam v'hasater shel gashmias shum tefisas b'makoy. What was happening, the Rebbe is saying, I don't know what happened. I just like the exhaustion just smacked me in the head. I just got so tired. The idea of these stones, it was a spiritual act, and this drew down and revealed the existence and the physicality, the light of his soul, and made it even stronger. And the point of the stones was to strengthen. In other words, to put a spiritual boundary around his head. It appeared to be a physical boundary, but we know that it didn't do anything. What it did is it caused a force field, if you will, of spirituality that strengthened and protected him. And therefore the animals were afraid because they sensed this like godly aura that surrounded him. Because the godly soul is in the brain, in the head. That's why he focused on his head. And that's for specifically where he put the stones. And therefore it revealed and mainly strengthened his godly soul. That these stones representative of an extra power that he surrounded around his head, which is the seat of his soul and the seat of his spiritual energy. וזהו שרש"י ממשיך תתחילו מריבויס זו את זו זויסון ורס על יניח צדיק ראש וזויסון ורס על יניח. And of course, this is why the stones were fighting as well, because they all wanted to be the focal point under his head. That's a powerful noggin right there. Mriva Isa, Ben Avanim Shemirumaza, Asher Zavi Roshoy Im Avanim Shava Vizchila, Shaya Saviv Gufa. V'teichen Mriva Hashem Alain Yanyach Tzadik as Roshoy. Kloimer Sheteichef Gilui HaKadusha B'Chedek HaGuf Shal Yaakov Yeheh Kamo HaTeichef HaGilui B'Chedek Rosh Shal Yaakov Mekhoy Mishkan Nefesh Elokis. Specifically, that he was dwelling in the place of the Beis HaMikdash, where he was lying down and his godly soul was on fire, if you will. And therefore, these stones just reinforced and gave more spiritual power that caused the animals, not that they should be afraid of the barrier, but they should be afraid of his godly soul that was shining so brightly that they didn't want to go near it. And therefore Hashem turned it into one stone to reveal the strength of holiness. To emphasize the power of Yaakov's entire being, from his head to his toe, spiritual and physical, all in one thing. And this part about the ultimate unification and oneness between above and below, represented through this one stone, showing the oneness or the unity of all physical and spiritual together, through the revealing of his very essence and being. And that's why he specifically laid down in that place, because of the holiness of the Beis HaMikdash that was revealed from his head to his toes in one equal line. And this is specifically how the revealing of the essence of God was specifically through his down here below. And this caused the ultimate strengthening of and true holiness, even through a physical matter of domem, of an inanimate object like a rock. That ultimately would become the Beis HaMikdash, the ultimate home of dwelling for God. Yirav. Api kohen amuvan hakoach u'miuchad shaya liYaakov u'voal lacharan she'ay de'aya b'chilasei lihiskavar elam shel haran v'oy doish lechavar la'achad ma'ala v'mata neshama v'gufay de'gilu atzmus. And through this, we can understand the unique power of Yaakov, that he was able to go down to Haran. That through this, he was able to overcome and overpower the concealment of Haran. And not only that, he was able to unify above and below, soul and body, and reveal the very atzmus and being of God's. Ha'amit Yaakov as Yud Beishvatim Dafka B'Haran Father Ofer Matasei Shalem. And therefore we see the unique thing of Yaakov going to Haran, how he was the progenitor of the Jewish people, the 12 tribes, specifically in Haran, where his bed was complete. In addition to this, according to what we said above, of the language of our rabbis, that his bed was complete. And mita or bed is the same word of mata, which means below. Not only was his bed complete, but mata, the lower worlds were complete. He completed them. And therefore his head, body, and legs were all equal. big and small, with Devar Zenifal Dafka Bacharan, and it happens specifically, in other words, to reveal the highest essence of God. He specifically had to do so in the lowest possible place. Mas Avrosim Lavanim, that's what it means. The deeds of the fathers are assigned to their children. Yistavo Yisbeim Chelkoi El Yoingam Chelko Hatachtaim. And this is the idea of bringing about equality between upper and lower. Mata, who Mata Lokis Biyador, that the God was down below. And this was what we saw of the miracles that took place in the land of Egypt. Egypt comes from the same language of mitzar, which means limitations and boundaries. Shamin Hamita Karasiya, as the Pasuk says, and I called out to God from the narrows. And this is the idea of expanding to the Yure. And this is opening up and revealing this abundance, this widening, if you will, of the godly energy from a place of concealment and constriction. And this is manifesting the Yud Hey and the Vav. And the completion and unification of below is caused specifically through revealing the very essence of God from above and below, right? That's the theme of the Sikha, as we started out talking about the Middle Rebbe. Physical and spiritual, above and below, complete oneness, complete state of equanimity. There's no less God in the physical world than in the spiritual world. The problem is that it's concealed. And that is the work of a Yid to reveal it. Pshitais, Atzmis, Kishura, Michades, in Pshitais Shal Yehudi. And this is the simple work, if you will, that is brought about and manifested and won through a simple Yid. Like it is known, Yisrael Kutzvuchad, that God and the Jewish people are truly one. Excuse me. Your base. Kivan, Ikar avoideth Yaakov b'Haran, Musaferes b'Parshas v'Yetzer. He said b'Negel la'atz, Yidui ha'achtus ha'neshama v'guf. And we see this specifically as we're reading in this week's Parsha. And it reveals the idea of unification of soul and body. Mitashrei shlema, that his bed was complete. Bahari ha'po'ala ha'oimora tzarich liyois b'shleinos gam b'Negel la'oil. And this is, therefore, the completion also as it's connected to this physical world. And this continues on through Parshas Vayishlach, which we read in Mincha time. Oh, wow. Extended my spine there. And Mincha, and Shabbos, that Yaakov sent forth angels to his brother Esau. And it explained, and that we see that the main service of rectification of the world takes place through Yaakov. Mavor Chasidus, and now is explained through Hasidut. Wow, it's really a marathon here. Not that I'm not enjoying, but it's like, whoo. I'm pretty sure this is the longest Sikha in the whole Nanachlan base. There's 20 paragraphs. Uvor b'chasidus, Yaakov hu b'chinas tikun ve'esav b'chinas tohu. That Yaakov comes from the world of tikkun, or fixing up or repairing, and Yaakov and Esav comes from the world of tohu, or chaos. But Yaakov shlach malachim le'esav kivan shechashav sha'asa nisparer kavar. And Yaakov sent out angels to Esav, since he already completed in his task of refining the world. Everything was ready to rock and roll in the times of Yaakov Avinu. Mamele Yocholi Yois Chibor V'Achtus Shel Orrois Meruvi V'Kelim the Tohu V'Esa Im Orrois V'Kelim Meruvim the Tikkun. And we see automatically that there was the unification and oneness of the lights of the multitude of lights and vessels of the tohu, the lights of tohu, which is Esav, with the vessels of Tikkun, which is Yaakov. And there was a complete rectification of the physical world. And the world became a vessel. You understand? The world that the Rebbe is saying was a vessel for this level at the times of Yaakov. That's what we just learned. It's mind-bending how we don't have the complete Geula right now. Even more than this oneness and unification was complete together with Ruchnius, Gashmis and Ruchnius. Through the revealing of the Atzmus, which is the essence of God, which is above the world of Tohu and Tikkun. And this is through revealing the very essence of God to the place that we see that physical and spiritual are truly one. Yud Gimel. Shtei Parshiyos Hana. These two parshas we're discussing now. V'yetzav v'yishlach. Avodas Yaakov Avinu. The connected to the service of Yaakov Avinu. Shehem b'makoyimos harishonim b'torah v'hem nisba'era seder avodah lamat. That they are the first, the places of the first place of Torah, and they is expressed in the order and the service below. Magalos es teichen v'taklis klalos avodas b'torah v'mitzvos, that will ultimately become the completion of the service of Torah and mitzvahs. This was the beginning of that process, if you will. In order to refine and rectify the physical body and the physical world. In order to transform them into a vessel for the spirituality of the soul. To the point that the physicality, the Rebbe is saying this so often in the Sikha, it's amazing. The point that physicality, one second, that a vessel to this, I already said that. And furthermore, that the physicality itself will reveal the power and cause and how it's truly one in a continuation with the spirituality. Up until the point that the earth will be a dwelling place for God. In other words, this world is no longer going to conceal God. On the contrary, it's going to reveal God. And all this will take place in the true and complete redemption. And then we will see how the entire physical body is refined already. And the entire world will reveal the light of God. And the glory of God will be revealed, and all flesh will see. And the physical flesh itself will see God. And this will bring forth and reveal in its ultimate complete way. That every single aspect of this world, inanimate objects, rocks, plants, animals, and how much more so the soul of man. Gashmit Satzma, the physicality itself will reveal the very essence of God. And it says, and the woman will surround the man. Literally meaning that the body itself, or the receiver, or the feminine, will give life to the spiritual, the masculine. Yud Dalet. Takli Zu Shel Torah v'Mitzvos Kala. And this is the ultimate general idea of Torah and mitzvahs. The Paul Chibur Ben Haruch Nesagashmis, to bring about the unification of spiritual and physical. And this is strengthened even more through revealing the Torah of Chassidus. The Paul, the Galus as a pure of and in order to bring about and reveal the unification and oneness of God with the world. Specifically through learning the innermost dimension of the Torah, the secrets of the Torah. And this is revealed through learning the Torah of Chassidus. This will bring about the unification of the innermost dimension of God with the innermost dimension of the Yidden. And this gives us the power to transform this lowly physical world and turn it into a kli l'gilui Elokis, a vessel to reveal God. And literally to reveal the very essence of God here below. And specifically through learning Torah Chassidus of Chabad. In such a way that the godly energy is enclosed in our understanding and grasping of our brain, of our wisdom. Bina Vadas, understanding and knowledge. Boyfriend Shah, is part of our soul, Bine. Yuvan Gam Bisekel Hadam, up until the point that literally even our sekel of our nefesh seklis, which is literally the thinking part of the animal soul. And it will even penetrate into the sekel of the nations of the world, Esav. They will also have the ability to perceive and understand that there is a God in this world that runs the show. How you do it like it's known. And your well springs will spread out. Chassidus, talking about specifically the well springs of Chassidut. Atzma Pashet, the very essence will spread forth. Will spread forth to the furthest part of the world. Including the nature of the world. That the entire world will become a vessel for the very energy and light of God. Yes, the more there is to say. Specifically through revealing the Torah of Chassidus. Specifically in this month of Kislev. It is the third month of the year, and it's the winter month, counting from Tishrei. Who can negate Vakashra im Chodesh Sivan, and it corresponds to the third month of the year where you're counting from the sun. Chodesh Lishisha Chodesh Kites, and that is the third month of the summer. This is in the winter. The Jewish calendar generally splits in half, summer and winter, without really talking about the shoulder seasons. Shishlishi Arihi Kasher im Matan Torah, and the third month is connected to Matan Torah. In the month of Sivan, it was the Torah that was given. And this was more referring to the revealing of the nigla of the Torah, of the revealed part of the Torah. But in the month of Kislev, this is the third month where the penimius of the Torah is revealed, the innermost part of the Torah. And this month is packed with Hasidic days. Yud Tes Kislev, Hagagula Shalad Mahazakin, the redemption of the Alter Rebbe, Nisad Torah Hasidus Chabad, and this is the foundation of the Torah of Hasidus Chabad. Rosh Hashanah Chassidus is the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus. The Kiyadua Sha'az. Achal Ikar Ha'enyin Shal Yafutz U'Mesuch HaChutz. Specifically, this began the main spreading out of the well springs in the times that the Alter Rebbe was redeemed from prison. And then we have the Test of Kislev, which is the day of the birth and the passing of the second Rebbe of Chabad, Admor HaEmslev. And we have Yud Kislev, and this is the Hagagul, the day that he was redeemed from prison. And then we have Hanukkah, which comes at the end of the month. And this is specifically connected to the innermost dimension of the Torah. Because the main miracle of Hanukkah was connected to the vat of oil. And the oil of the Torah is the secrets of the Torah, talking about Chassidus. And the idea is that the menorah lights up to the whole outside world. Sivan, and the difference between the month of Kislev and the month of Sivan is Chodesh HaChoresh Hi Yemei Hagashmi, that the winter months, if you will, are connected more to physicality. Hari Gashmi and Kishorim Avodas Adam Namata, more connected to our work down here below. It's known in the cold winter months that the sun, or representative of godly energy, is more concealed. It's not visible, so we have to work harder. And this is more connected to our work from below, or connected to physicality, if you will. Ki lo amatir Hashem Elokim al haaretz, va'adam ein la'avod es ha'adama, va'ad ya'ala min haaretz v'kashat es kal pnei adama. This is not the case with the summer month, and this is connected more literally to the revealing of godliness in a ruchnius way, spiritual work, times of Pesach. And specifically, it's through the physical work down here below, Gashmis of Olam, that we're doing in the physical world, that emphasizes more the connection of the physical to the spiritual. It's more through the physical work that we reveal the spiritual and the physical as being one. Min haaretz, referring to lifting up from below to above. Devar machiach shuhu kashru be'erech legidrei hatachtoin, ashka es kol pnei adama, milamayla lamata gashmi yirida ma'in nishmaya avo ba'ofen v'kashrei es kol pnei adama rehem mashkim es kol haaretz es kol hagashmim. I'm going to go through this quickly. So for the government, and now we're talking about this month of Kislev, that it's specifically connected to the revealing of the Torah Chassidus. That Chassidus has the ability to penetrate into the seichel of a person, as well as to penetrate godly energy into the world. And to bring pure knowledge. Da el Eloki avicha, in order to come to know the God of your fathers. The Rebbe said, Hasidus is the way to go. Ad oifen kulo mashke. Shekala oilim kulo hadorab musag belakus. The entire world will be penetrated with godly energy. That the knowledge of God will cover the world like the oceans cover the ocean bed. And this, of course, will be revealed in the true and complete redemption. And again, we see hinted in the advantage of the month of Kislev, which is the combination of two words, Kislev. Case, and the level of God that is connected to case, which is literally usually concealing over the essence of God, is going to be revealed through the lave, which is connected to revealing. And then we will have ultimately how everything reaches a state of shleimus, where physical and spiritual, concealed and revealed, are truly one. Tes Vav. And the revealing of the Torah Hasidus in this month of Kislev specifically. This is causing the coming together of spiritual and physical in one matter. Specifically, as now we're learning about the revealing of the Hasidus of the Mittler Rebbe. In such a way that we reveal the Torah of Hasidus of Chabad in an orderly or fashionably way. And every one of our holy rabbis and leaders, our nasis, the leaders of our generation, brought forth this way in such a way that it became revealed more and more. Everything that will be in a state of newness, of a new energy. The Alter Rebbe brought forth the level of Chachma, which is a point. And after we have the Mittler Rebbe, that he brought forth the level of Bina, and this is connected to the river or the winding up of the point so it becomes with depth and breadth. These pashtus v'rochavus, v'rochaybis and nahar, the opening or widening of the river, and this is referring to bina. V'dugmas mi hanahar hanamshichim amin ela b'nahar ha'im arachavim pshit kafishu ro'im v'drushe chassidus shaloi. We see that the Middle Rebbe took the Alter Rebbe's Chassidus and opened it up and spread it out and made it way deeper and explained it in much more depth. I'm currently learning Hemshech Imre Bina with my wife, interesting enough. And the woman goes on Bina. And it's mind-boggling. If I had enough energy, I'd go get the book. It's a huge sefer, and hundreds of pages. We barely scratched the surface on one pasuk, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hundreds of pages of the deepest Chassidus, mind-boggling stuff on one pasuk. This is what we see why the Middle Rebbe took the point of the Alter Rebbe's. If you learn the Alter Rebbe's Chassidus, it's very condensed. It's almost like learning Tosafos in the Gemara. He brings one sentence with depth inside of it. The Middle Rebbe opened it up in a big time way. כפי שרואים בדרושי חסידות שלו, שנים חסידות של האדמו"ר הזקן, בואים אצלו בגילוי רב, הספרסות רחבות. He spread it out, he opened it in a much broader capacity, right? Because the Alter Rebbe's Chokmah, it's one point. The Middle Rebbe's Bina, this is the Hey, the Yud, it's a dot, and the Hey, it's opening it up and spreading it out. Bichdei the Pual, Bishlemas Es Yehud, Hasekel Im HaMoskal. In order to bring about the completion and unification of the seikel, the muskal, the brain with the comprehension of thinking. To unify the seikel with the one who creates the seikel, God Himself. This is specifically through learning Chassidus. By learning Chassidus specifically, the Rebbe says you unify your brain with the one who made your brain, with God. Unbelievable. In such a way that it adds on and comprehends and takes this point of Chokhmah and brings the depth of Bina in such a way that it's bringing about the unification. And through this we can understand the connection to unifying physical and spiritual, God and the world. This is done specifically, the Rebbe says, through Chassidut. And the completion is through specifically adding on to Chokmah and also with Bina. Yesh Lamar, there is to say, we're going to be a few minutes over, not too much. I anticipate we'll be done in about 10 minutes overtime. As it's connected to the widening of the river, Bina, which is referring to the sphere of Bina. Drawing down from the root of Bina, that is above from Chokmah. The source of Bina ultimately, Penimius, the inner dimension of the heart, ultimately comes from Keter. It's from a higher level than Chokmah. Widening in his essence. And therefore it has the power to unify physical and spiritual. Because it's deriving from a source above both of them, referring to Keter. And therefore it's hinted by the description that was given to him, the middle or the Middle Rebbe. Because he's the middle or the combiner of the first, and the third. He unifies them both. And this is because he's the level of Bina. He unifies the Nasi that came before him, which is the Admor Hazaken, the Alter Rebbe of Chokmah. and the Nasi that comes after him, the Tzemek Tzedek, which is connected to Dat. And he's the one who combines the three forefathers of Chassidus. And that is the ultimate expression of what is Chassidus Chabad, to unify God with the world. Test Zion. Al piyana muvan medua dafka etzel arma emsui mutziim as a chider shul shleimus. Shiyamav chayav agashmim hayam ayom leyon. And now we see how the Middle Rebbe's days were complete or perfect, connected to both spiritual and physical. Kivan she'etzel mudgash chibur shal ruchnius agashmius. And therefore he had the ability to combine spiritual and physical together. Shleimas ha'avodah ha'ruchnius misbatas mash. Gam eshim ma'av shishnas ha'gashmim gam heim ha'timim shleim. Ba'al pi zeh yesh lomar gam hatam medua yoim zeh. Hu gam be'erev hakana l'yud kislev. And we see also a connection to the 9th of Kislev with the 10th of Kislev. The 9th is the day he was born in past, which we've been talking about for the last 2 hours. And the 10th of Kislev is the day he was redeemed from prison. And through this we can see the complete unification of the service of a tzaddik through his ruchnius and his gashmis. Mind bending what the Rebbe is saying here. Unbelievable. The Rebbe is saying specifically by unifying physical and spiritual, which is the fact that he was born and passed on the 9th of Kislev, as we've been talking about for the last 2 hours. And it's showing how his physical and his spiritual life were both one, that his physical days manifested his spiritual days and reached a state of oneness. And specifically through that, the Rebbe says, this specifically gave him the power and prepared him immediately to bring about his redemption on the next day on Yud. Of spreading out the well springs. And then even as it's talking about compared to the revealing of the Chassidus of Admor Emsri, up until the ultimate redemption. Or as above any boundaries or limitations. And we see add on and bring us new powers that are not compared at all to what was before. To unify and bring about the oneness of above and below. Oh, the Sirah is even more than that. That the redemption of the 10th of Kislev. This was the beginning and the preface to the redemption of the 19th of Kislev, which is the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus. I don't want to spend too much time outside because we are over time limit, even though it's self-imposed time limit, so it means nothing because I'm giving the shir so I can go over if I want. But the point of the matter is the Rebbe gave a huge remes and hint over here that the path to redemption and the power for redemption comes about through unifying spiritual and physical. That the Rebbe says that the Middle Rebbe was redeemed on the 10th of Kislev because the 9th of Kislev manifests the oneness of his spiritual and physical actions together. And and what is this saying to each one of us? That specifically through rectifying our physical bodies and the world around us, from bringing this godly energy down into our physical being and having a state of oneness between spiritual and physical, this is the key to redemption. This is how we bring forth redemption in our lives. It's a pellet, a wondrous statement. Yud Zion. Zaku Baruch, that's what I have to say. Lo heisif shabakal zeh yishana hadgasha yisra b'kavir shana zu. And the Rebbe said this is emphasized even more in this year. Kasher tes kislev chal b'yom haShabbat, where the tes of kislev falls out on Shabbat. It's not in our situation. And us, it falls out on Thursday. B'yom haShabbat nemshachas hakadusha baruch nesha oinig Shabbat. And this is the Shabbat that draws down the holiness and spirituality of the pleasure of Shabbat. The gasmir shel Yehudi, achilasoi v'shtiasoi v'shinasoi. The physicality of a Jew in his eating and his drinking. And this is through the mitzvah of eating and drinking specifically. And that we drink and eat on Shabbos in a way of pleasure. That even down in Shabbat, it has the ability to affect and arouse even the physical body and the animal soul, because everything is done for pleasure on Shabbat. This is applicable to every Jew in all times and places. How much more so in our generation, in our time. As the rabbis have taught us, that we have already reached all the signs of redemption as brought forth in the Gemara Sanhedrin, and we already find ourselves on the threshold of redemption. And it's been expressed many times of recent. So after the tremendous amount of work that has been done, throughout the continuation of all the generations, and specifically through the work of our Rebbes, of our leaders of our generation, and that began with the forefathers of Chassidut, and the days of their redemption, Yud Beis, Yud and Yud Tes Kislev, and the days of their birth. Uma'az kavar avra kama dorais v'shani ad avodah shel kadosh alma nasi dereno, up into our point in our time with the leader of our generation. Kavar siyama shakal habiror, we have completed all of the refinement in this world. Kulam gam habiror shel Esav Esadam, including the refining of Esav and his Adayim. Mikal shechein v'kal v'chaim, and how much more so. Sorry, the field is man Yaakov, that this was even took place in the days of Yaakov. So how much more so, much further along we are in completion now. So var Yaakov v'chashav sha'asav shizvara kavar, that Yaakov already rectified Esau. And how much more so does this apply after all these years and all the work we've been doing? Esav kavar nizbara legamri, that Esav is already completely rectified. כפי שרואים זויס גם הנהגה בזמן הזה, של אלמות העולם מסתיימים לעשו הוא עדיין, בדרך מלכות של חסד. And we see the Rebbe says, how much is this more emphasized in our generation? We see that the continuation of Esau, which is this country we're living in, America, has already been rectified because it is a nation of kindness and helping the Jewish people in their work. The Rebbe said this physical world is already completely refined and rectified. Such a powerful sikha. All these sikhas are so powerful. This is like, wow. And it's already a vessel to receive the lights of Ruchnius. The Rebbe is saying that the entire world is already a vessel to receive the light of Mashiach. Everything's done. That the entire world is already a vessel to reveal the true and complete redemption and the simple atzmus and very essence and being of God. And this is revealed in the ultimate essence of our righteous Redeemer himself. And also revealing the very essence of the simplicity of every Jew. I'm sorry, this is a very painful thing for me to say, even though it's obviously true because the Rebbe says it's true. It's hard to rectify what's going on in the world right now. The Rebbe says, and we can already see that when a Yid opens their eyes, Kedive, correctly, I don't know what that means correctly, but if a Yid opens her eyes correctly, we will see, and the Rebbe emphasized this point, that every Jew, the Rebbe said, if we correctly open our eyes, we will see how the entire world is already ready for the redemption. Yesh Savara Es Hal Shulchan Aruch, and the table is already set. Yesh Kavar Es Hal Leviatan B'Shor Bar, and the Shor Bar and the Leviatan and the guarded wine are already on the table. In other words, Amalek is shechted. Nothing is left. Everything's complete. Shulchan Avim, the table of our fathers, the King of Kings, together with Mashiach himself, the Reino Nasi the Reino, and with the leader of our generation, the Acharavim Shana Ma'az Yitzchak Kavakadosh Amar Shem Kavar Yesh Gam Nadat, and after 40 years of the teachings of our previous Rebbe, we already have a heart to know, and eyes to see, and ears to hear. So powerful. And at this time, it's necessary only to open up our heart to know. And open up our eyes to see. And open up our ears to hear. And through this, the Natzel es kol ramach ivrim, that all 248 organs and all 365 connecting tissues, and to add on in all of our beings to learn more Torah and fulfill more mitzvot, and specifically to learn the innermost dimension of the Torah, by learning specifically the Chassidus and fulfilling the teachings of our Rebbes, specifically by learning matters of redemption, as we're doing right here. But is that everyone who's watching and joining the shir and learning along, when Mashiach comes, you could say confidently to Melech HaMashiach, I did what you told me to do. I learned about Mashiach and Geula. And the Rebbe says, and when we learn the Chassidus specifically about Mashiach and Geula in such a way that this will cause our eyes to open and our heart to open and our ears to hear and our eyes to see. And that we will literally see that the physicality of the world is already reflecting the true and complete redemption. And then we will learn the Torah of Mashiach in a way that we will see. And all of this is already ready. And the Rebbe said, all we need to do is open our eyes and we will see all of this. This is what the Rebbe says. What the Rebbe says of them is through and through. Yotes, and to bring it into actuality. Since that we have the unification of the soul and body already. Ruchnius and Gashmius, physical and spiritual. And everything is already done and completed. And everything is prepared and ready for the redemption. It's necessary only to reveal this in actuality. Okay, we'll call the Rosh first of all. The Indian Shahazman Garmar. That we find ourselves in these times that are complete. of the days of the day of the birth and the passing of the Mittler Rebbe. The Chaysev B'Leimer HaTorah. We must add on in learning his Torah. Dafka Bo'efen Shel Ruch Rechoivo Hanahar. Specifically in such a way that it's opening up in a state of wideness of Bina, of the sphere of Bina. And all this is applicable to every single Jew. Anashim and Taf, men, women, and children. Talmud Gadol Shebaba Lidei Masa. And the ultimate goal of Torah is to lead to action. In actuality, all this should come to deed. By learning the teachings of the Mittler Rebbe. This will bring us to the completion of a service of Torah of Chassidus and the physicality of the world. And then automatically all the days will be filled. And then we will have the unification of spiritual and physical. Chassidishkeit, everything will become Chassidishkeit. That his physical and spiritual will be one. ובזמן ומקוים הגשמיים שלו יתגשרו החמים מויס וחיוסם ונבואיס ma Yiddishkeit, and that we should bring this warmth into our Yiddishkeit and also make it Chassidishkeit. There should be no separation between any of this. It should be one. In addition to this. The organ, we must have Chassidish Farbrengens in all places. From the day of redemption of Yud Kislev. The Varvel Lemud Shem B'Torah Soyisho Ba'al HaGeula, and increase in learning from the teachings of the Baal HaGeula, the Mittler Rebbe. The Kabbalah Hakdatos Tayyus B'Neim, take on good resolutions upon herself, including also Hakdatos Mistamin the Kavua. Hidvadu Chassidus, to add on in Chassidish Farbrengens. Hidvadu Gedolah, but Yud Tes Kislev, Hagagula, and Yud Tes Kislev, the day of redemption of the Alter Rebbe. The Rois, Asois, and Mekol Kitzri table. And these Farbrengens of Yud Tes Kislev should take place in every single place in the four corners of the world. Arafilo Befina Nidchas, boyfriend Shakal, Pini Ba'oilam. Hey, wherever a Jew is found, there should be a Farbrengen. As Yud Tes Kislev is the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus. And we should continue on with our Farbrengens the entire month of Kislev. And specifically by adding on and doing further matters of Torah of Chassidus and going in the ways of Chassidus. Into the end of the month of Kislev, the Orech Yidvadut B'Meshech Kol Yemei Hanukkah, and continue on and have Farbrengens throughout Hanukkah. Ruach Zeshel Ha'oros Ha'asma V'Siva V'Nirois Hanukkah Al Petach V'Chutz, and the Hanukkah light shall spread out to the world. Boyfriend the Moisiva Haylach Or Yom we increase and add on in light every day. Chlal Minhag Rabbi Senu Asinos, according to the Minhag of our Rebbes. The Kli Mesivas Lebnei Abayit Livnei Abayit B'Yemei Hanukkah. Haylach Demei Hanukkah, and to give coins to the children of the home. Prat L'Yadim Levanim Uvanois, and specifically to the little boys and girls. Kisher Kol Echad Mikoyim Minhag Zeh Parsam, and we should also and publicize miracles throughout Hanukkah. The Kashim Oy Yosef Im Rabbi Senu Asina, specifically connected to the teachings of our Rebbes. And to add on and give power to their Torah. And this should increase every single day in your private lives, including and specifically. And specifically, we have to add on increase in our learning and teachings of matters of Mashiach. And this will bring forth the true and complete redemption in the ultimate way. Chaf. God's will. That these words should bring forth that we should take good resolutions upon ourselves. And this will bring immediately the true and complete redemption. And every single Jew in our flesh literally will see God. And immediately. And we'll all go together. And in the clouds of glory. Together with all our service and all of our work. Including all our kosher physical belongings. Including our homes. Mikdash Ma'at, which are a small temple. And our individual specific homes, as we said. And everything will be completely penetrated with the holiness and kedusha of Chassidus. And the God's skin will dwell upon us. And we will go to our holy land, to Yerushalayim, to the holy city, and the holy Beit HaMikdash, and the Kodesh Kadoshim. And there we will have the foundation stone. And mainly it should happen immediately. Wow. A lot of stuff to unpack here. The most important thing is that it should come to Maisa B'Foal. We should all have Geula. The Jewish people in Israel should have Geula. The Jewish people around the world should have Geula. And the entire nations of the world should stand and point and tremble and say, there's the God of Israel. There's the God of the Jewish people. And our blood will be avenged. And we will have revealed good. Take off me'ad mamish. Yechi Adonenu Moreinu v'Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach L'Moed. Yechi Adonenu Moreinu v'Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach L'Olam Voed. Yechi Adonenu Moreinu v'Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach L'Olam Voed. God bless you, Moshiach Now.